Firstly, before I go back to federal politics, the breaking news this afternoon that the Liberal Premier of Tasmania, Peter Goodwin, has decided to resign 2 years into the job for family reasons. Here he is.
Most importantly, I want to thank my family. My wife Mandy, son Finn, daughter Millie, they have just been outstanding in their support. They have enabled me to take on what I think has been the best job in the world.
Let's go now to the LNP Senator for Queensland, a former professional political campaigner himself, James McGrath. Thanks for joining us, James. I want to get back to the federal stuff in a moment, but you would have been surprised, as we all were, to hear about the resignation there in Tasmania.
This is a loss for the Liberal Party and a loss for Tasmania, but it is a gain for Peter and his family, and I wish him and his family good luck. A lot of politicians will probably be looking at him going, you're a lucky bugger, you get to spend more time with your family now. And for a politician to leave when they're at the top of their game is a good thing, and we wish him all the best.
Well, James, let me talk about the campaign and the way it's unfolding. I've said at the outset that I think this character assassination attempt on the Prime Minister is very American. Now, we expect him to be criticised. We expect all candidates to get a lot of scrutiny. But this seems to be the main tactic of this campaign at the moment, is just to attack Scott Morrison. Have you seen anything like it in Australia before?
No, this is the Labor Party dirt machine on steroids with their operation against the PM. We've seen minor operations before, so the Queensland state election in 2012, Labor focused on Campbell and disgracefully his wider family. And that was to cover up the fact they had no policies. And what we're seeing here at a federal level actually is Labor focusing on Scott Morrison personally because they have no policies. You're right, politicians should be held to account in the relation of their policies. Now look at Anthony Albanese. We don't know what his policies are. We know he's going to be weak for Australia because he won't tell us what he stands for. And that is a difference between what Labor are doing to Scott Morrison at the moment. Their campaign is grubby, it's disgraceful, and I think Anthony Albanese, instead of throwing mud at Scott Morrison, should be calling the Labor attack dogs into line and saying, let's have a civil debate about the future of Australia.
What about the media role in this? When I heard these reports on the weekend, it all sounded familiar to me. Sure enough, a bit of Googling, you can find that all this has been reported before, yet the ABC makes it their lead item. The taxpayer-funded media trumping up old news in an effort to target the Prime Minister. Who's accountable at the ABC?
Well, I think we've all learnt that no one is accountable at the ABC. The board is a toothless tiger. That the chair of the board of the ABC has drunk the ABC's Kool-Aid, and the ABC is just a Marxist staff-run collective. And what is disappointing is that the ABC continue to snub their nose at normal, everyday, quiet Australians as they push their agenda. Now, the ABC, through its news arm, is effectively acting as a propaganda outlet for the Labor Party and for the Greens. And you're right, the news about what happened in a pre-selection almost 20 years ago is news from 20 years ago, but the ABC is breaking it because I think they're going to get a Walkley or something like that. I think the ABC should be focusing on real issues and focusing on how they're spending taxpayers' money rather than acting in such a partisan fashion.
Well, sure, go over an old issue if you've got some new information. But my point is the supposed new revelations are not new. Everything about this story has been revealed years and years ago and dealt with. I want to get you on the polls, James. I know as a politician you don't like talking about polls, but as a former professional campaigner in Australia and in London, you know the polls very well. The trend is your friend, and it's only minor, but there's a distinct tightening as the situation gets real.
I'll be upfront. Any politician who says they don't look at polls is a liar. We all look at polls, and we're sort of addicts for polling. But what is interesting, you're correct about the trend is our friend. This coming election, you're going to see a tightening of the polls. If the election was held today, Labor would win. Labor and the Greens would win. And I think that would be bad for Australia. But the election's going to be held in 6 or 7 weeks' time. And what you'll see, as there is some additional attention put on Albanese and his lack of policies, that people are going, is it really the time to change? And I don't think it is the time for change. I think we need stability. I think we need, Peter Dutton as Defence Minister rather than what's his name as Defence Minister. I think we want Scott Morrison as Prime Minister rather than Albanese as Prime Minister. And I think what's going to happen with the mob, that when they have to make a choice between who's going to sit around the cabinet table, that they will back the government that got us through COVID and that has a plan for the future. This coming election is going to be one of the closest, I think, in Australia's history.
Thanks for joining us, James. I appreciate it.
Anytime.
Senator James McGrath there, who, as I mentioned, he's run campaigns for the Liberals here in Australia. He's run successful campaigns in the UK too for the Conservatives. Boris Johnson into the Lord Mayor's job in London being one of them. Now, if you want to get the real story on what happens behind the scenes in an election campaign and some of the big issues leading up to this particular election, you've got to watch Sky News tomorrow night. The Campaign Uncovered is Peter Credlin's special investigation, looking at, in particular, some of the so-called independent shenanigans in this campaign. That's on tomorrow night, the 5th of April, 8 o'clock tomorrow night. Don't miss it. Compulsory viewing before you get ready for this election campaign.